Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening. My name's Sophie. I am your Parents Zone local guide. I'm here with my colleague Alice, who is on the chat. So if you have a comment you'd like to make or a general question you'd like to ask, please do pop it in the chat and Alice will let me know that it's there. If you've got something that specifically relates to your family, you can get in contact with us through the Parents Zone local website to request advice or support. And Alice will pop that link into the chat so that you know how to get in contact with us if there's something you'd like to ask or something you need help with. So, excuse me, I had a big sneezing attack before we came on air this evening. What is it that I'm going to cover today? So we're going to be watching some short videos and I'll be posing you some questions to kind of get you thinking about the issues that we're going to cover. The aim is to help you feel confident, to get to grips with your child's online world and to help them stay safer when they are online. I'm going to be explaining how you can help build or foster their digital resilience. Now, digital resilience is a phrase you might not be familiar with, but in our first video, our Parents Zone trainer Chelsea explains a bit more about what it is and how it can help support your family's digital life. Then our second video will dig a bit deeper into understanding the online risks your child could be exposed to. Then we'll go on to explore how you can help your child learn to respond to these risks and help you know what to do if something goes wrong and how you can help your child recover if it does. Before we start, here is your chance to let me know what it is that you like to do online as a family. So currently for my family, it's all about searching up for recipes. I have lost my cooking mojo. I need ideas. I've got these ingredients. So me and my son search up recipes online to see what we're going to cook. We love watching Netflix together and he really enjoys sharing TikTok videos with me. So please do pop it in the chat and let me know. So now we're going to watch the first of our videos and then I'll talk a little bit about what our trainer talks about in the video.
Welcome to the Resilient Families Parent Session. This session is all about digital resilience. If that sounds a bit dull, I promise it isn't. It's a different and better way to think about keeping your children safe online. If we can support children's digital resilience, we can feel more confident about letting them explore, learn, and have fun online. One researcher called it ordinary magic, and that's a lovely way to think about it. There are ways you can give your children the ordinary magic they need to navigate a very complicated digital world. So let's start with what digital resilience means. It's actually very straightforward and basically common sense, or parent sense, which is even better than the common sort. A resilient child will understand when they're at risks online, they'll know how to get help if they need it, they'll learn from experience, and they'll be able to recover when something goes wrong so that they can continue to enjoy and use technology. Resilience is sometimes wrongly described as meaning a child will be able to bounce back if something goes wrong. As parents, we know that children don't always bounce back, and we shouldn't expect them to toughen up to a digital world that can be very hard for them to navigate, even though they seem to be able to understand new apps and new games in the blink of an eye. Supporting resilience means giving children the skills, knowledge, and support they need to be able to flourish. And that's what we're going to teach you today. At the end of this session, you'll have some tips and ideas to try at home based on this framework, so that you can nurture your child's resilience. The first important element of digital resilience that we're going to explore is to understand. This is the important knowledge your child will need online. This is a bit like teaching them to cross the road. You need to explain to them all the risks of fast traffic, blind spots, and the possibility of a motorbike zooming around the corner. Helping a child to understand and spot risks online is much harder than road sense, but here are some of the risks that you need to help them think about and spot. Unkind behaviour, like bullying or embarrassing photos. Unsuitable content, like pornography or violent content. Online behaviour that could put them in tricky situations, like sexting. Unhealthy ideas about body image, or even extreme ideas that could lead to radicalisation. And of course, those clearly dangerous things that can happen online, just as they do offline, like grooming. That's a pretty wide range of risks, and we know it can feel overwhelming. That in turn can make messages that tell you to block the internet or use tools to try and limit it sound incredibly appealing. The problem is that there aren't really any shortcuts to raising resilient children. Tools can help sometimes, just like traffic lights help you to cross the road. But it's incredibly important that we give children the skills and behaviours they need so that if they find themselves in a difficult spot, they know what to do.
So Chelsea was talking there about lots of different types of online risk that we need to be aware of, and every family will have experienced different things online, and you'll probably all have different things that worry you. If you feel comfortable, please do share in the chat the kinds of things that maybe you're concerned about, something you might have heard about. I've been speaking to lots of parents this week. Squid Game and other inappropriate content for younger children is certainly something that has come up. How children behave towards each other online has certainly been raised as well, but also children being exposed to, as Chelsea mentioned, those kind of unhealthy ideas about dieting or what they should be eating or what their body should look like. And we know that there's a big range of risk that you might be concerned about. But in our second video, we're going to find out a bit more about the kind of the right sorts of questions that can really help you have that supportive and active part in your child's digital life.
Of course, there are lots of things that make teaching your children about digital risks so much harder than talking about offline risks. The risks are usually hidden away on private devices. You can't always see what your children are doing, and that's as it should be. Children need private spaces, and lots of the behaviour that lead to risk are still fairly new. For example, it could be visiting skin gambling sites that allow children to make bets with virtual gaming items. Or it could be spaces like OnlyFans that allow in-stream payments or tipping that can encourage high-risk behaviours like sharing images. So how can you help your children to understand risks online, and what are the conversations you should be having with them? One super easy way is to keep asking them W questions, by which I mean where, who, what. These sorts of questions can start useful conversations that give you a chance to talk to them about potential risks. So, let's have a closer look. Where do they go online? Thinking about where they go, the websites, apps, games and platforms they spend their time on, gives you a chance to discuss those places and talk about all the things they like about them and also the risks. For example, check they know that online services have terms and conditions that explain what they can do with their data. Make sure you've talked about accidental purchases in games and that they know how to report and use blocking tools. and ask them about whether they find that some places have content on them that's nasty or worries them. Open discussions about the places they go online are a great way to help them to think about risk and to talk to you about how to minimise them. Talking about what your child does online gives you a chance to discuss some of the behaviours that can bring risk. For example, downloading content, sharing images, and watching videos. All of these things can be entertaining and harmless. They can also be risky, especially if they're stepping outside what they're mature enough to do. Things like illegal downloading, which is something lots of youngsters do, so they can watch their favourite shows, or perhaps sharing naked images or watching content that is extreme. This includes extreme political views as well as other forms of extreme content like violence. Most of the time, children are doing fun and very innocent things. Sometimes they push the boundaries, and that's why talking to them about what they're doing is important. Not to tell them off or sound like you don't trust them, but so that they understand how to behave and know that how they behave can bring risks. Who are they in touch with online? The networks children develop online can become really important aspects of their friendship groups. Remember, online friends are real friends. It's important to think about them as such and want to know about them just as you do their offline friends. It's also true that some online friends can be toxic and not the sort of people you'd be comfortable with them knowing. Talking to your child about how to figure out if the people they know online are people they can trust is a really important task. Getting them to think about their digital networks will help them to think about how close they want to make those friendships. They should know that sharing personal information with people they might only know through a game is very high risk and not something they should do. Helping them to think about people's motives for wanting to be their friends online will start to build their safety radar. Encourage them to question relationships and set boundaries about what's okay for digital friends. These should include things like not sharing photos, not sharing personal information, and definitely not meeting them offline unless they have you with them or another adult you both agree on. I'm going to spend a bit longer on these who risks because people who intend harm to children are obviously the most serious concern. It's worth saying here that risk doesn't always lead to harm. All of us take risks from time to time, and children also need to learn how to manage it too. However, some risks can lead to serious harm, and it's important to protect children from that. It's also worth reminding ourselves that thankfully, most children will never experience these most serious of harms. But because they are so serious, if they do happen, it is important to know about them. Adults who intend to harm children will start with a grooming process. This is true online and offline. What is particularly concerning online is that it can happen very quickly. So what do you need to know? Children can be groomed online for various reasons. These include sexual exploitation and radicalisation. Groomers will exploit a child's lack of maturity and worldly wisdom. They might compliment them, make them feel like they're friends. They'll spend time with them, listening, flattering and chatting. If we're thinking about a child who's been radicalised, the process might start with someone just sharing content with them, then discussing ideas and gradually shaping their beliefs about the world into one that is misleading and can lead a child to developing extreme ideas. Extremist groups are increasingly using social media to recruit and radicalise children, or raise money for their cause. This can happen on the most popular platforms. including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Grooming for sexual exploitation follows a similar path. The adult will try to develop a trusting relationship in order to encourage a child to share a naked image. And once they have done that, it becomes easy for the groomer to blackmail the child and control them to such an extent that they can be abused. It is frightening stuff, but the good news is that this sort of harm is rare, and a resilient child is less likely to experience harm online. Talking to them about online risks and giving them strategies to manage it will make them safer and develop their resilience. Your parenting is the thing that matters, and understanding resilience will give you the right knowledge to inform your approach.
So in that video, Chelsea made the point that it is not easy being a parent in the digital age. And it did cover some pretty heavy issues. And I'm wondering how that might have made you feel. And maybe it has made you think about the conversations that you have at home or maybe don't have at home as a family. Knowing what to do or how to respond, we know can be difficult and sometimes worrying. But the bottom line is that family discussions are really critical to supporting your child. Of course, I know this can sometimes be often easier said than done, but if you can think about where and how you have these conversations, or if there's something that you find difficult, this is a really good starting point. So young people tell us that actually it's much better not to have a kind of sit down face-to-face conversation about these issues, that maybe finding a time when you're both relaxed and you're maybe doing the cooking together or washing up and drying up or going for a walk or in the car, these times where you can ask questions but you can also listen to the answers and also respect that they might need certain levels of privacy about some of their activity online, and remembering that pushing for answers may not get the best results, so that listening is just as important as talking. So now we have our third video, and in this Chelsea will talk about how learning from experiences can really help, and also how to build those clear and consistent boundaries that are a really helpful thing for your child.
The next important element of resilience that we're going to explore is learning. How can we help children to learn from their experiences? This is an incredibly important part of resilience, and it's also very helpful for parents. If you can help your child learn from their experiences, you will find that they start to follow rules because they want to. They'll understand why they're there, and they'll start to make their own informed decisions. It's called internalizing learning, which basically means instead of a child needing you to be there telling them what to do, they have taken it in and understood it. And when they have, you can trust them to do things without you telling them to. It can even mean fewer arguments, especially once they learn that when you say it's time to turn a game off, you mean it. But how do you help a child to learn? It's obviously important to be consistent. Set some boundaries and stick to them, or else they won't learn what the rules are, and that can be incredibly confusing for a child. But I'm sure you're already across that one. What else can you do? Well, one thing is to create space for them to reflect on their experiences. And yes, that means talking, but it's also about offering them ideas to do things differently. For example, if they keep having the same experience, try getting them to write down 3 things they could do differently. Let's think of an example of a problem a child might experience. They might say, "You tell me off every time I won't stop gaming and I hate it." What kind of plans could they write down? It could be to set an alarm for 15 minutes before the time they have to stop. Choose a game that they can play in the time they have available. Pick a treat for when they stop gaming, like some chocolate. It is learning by modelling behaviours and creating plans and rules together that they will want to follow. What's useful for you to know is that this process isn't always about finding solutions that work, although that's always a nice bonus. It's about spending time looking at the problem and thinking about it so they learn to develop their own ideas. In the meantime, your boundaries will still be important and you'll need to be consistent with them. What sort of boundaries might you want to consider to help your child learn? You might want to consider time limits on how much time they spend online, when not to use devices, such as the bathroom, when not to be using devices, such as at meal times or around bedtimes, and your expectations for their behaviours. These can all be your decisions. It doesn't necessarily matter what the boundaries are. The important thing is that you have some. If there are no boundaries for your child about what they can and can't do online, it could feel to them that no one cares about what they do. And that is definitely not the case. There are lots of other things you can do to support learning. Work together to find blocking and reporting tools on the apps and platforms they use. Get them to show you how something works. Show and tell is always a good teaching method. Focus on problem solving with them and maximise teachable moments. Those odd times when something happens gives you a chance to say, this happened and what I learnt from it is that, and I'll do it differently next time. It may sound cheesy, but believe me, modelling learning is a great way to show your children that it's a process that goes on. And it can be something you do together as a family. It can take a while to get into the habit with digital things, but once you start, it becomes very intuitive. Remember how you taught them to ride a bike, or maybe brush their teeth? It's like that. Show, explain, practice, and be there until they've really got the hang of it.
So in that video, we looked at the importance of boundaries. Of course, in your home, you might not call them boundaries, you might call them rules, maybe something else, but whatever name you give them, you know that children will always be testing them. I am often asked about what boundaries and rules work and how to get them to stick. The most important thing is that you don't set rules or boundaries that are impossible to stick to. For example, you might try banning devices at certain times or in certain places, but then you might need to rely on them, maybe just for 5 minutes piece to do something important, or even just for space to hang the washing up. Whatever boundaries or rules you set, really try to avoid changing your mind as much as is possible in a busy life. As before, you can let us know what your boundaries are in the chat. We have our final video now. In this, we find out about the importance of knowing what to do if there is a problem online, and the equally important role of finding ways to help your child recover if something ever does go wrong.
In this next section, we're going to talk about the remaining elements of resilience: know and recover. They sit together really well because they are all about knowing how to get help when you need it and recovering when something goes wrong. One of the real challenges for parents is that while children appear to be very tech savvy, they are still children without the life skills they need to navigate such a complicated digital world. Things go wrong, mistakes are made, and when they do, it's important that they understand that help is available so problems don't escalate into serious harms. It can be very hard for children to ask for help when often the reason that they got into difficulties was that they broke one of the rules or did something you've told them probably lots of times not to do. So, what can you do? Well, the first thing is the hardest of all, and that's to stay calm and be patient. A consistent, calm, reasonable response when something goes wrong, online or offline, is incredibly important because you want your child to know that you will always respond calmly. We're not just talking about online mistakes here, we're talking about your approach to discipline overall. Whatever happens, you have to have in the back of your mind, I'm their first source of help if something goes wrong. So you need to be the person that will react calmly and fairly, whatever they have done. You need to always explain your decisions and give them their chance to put their point of view forward. It isn't easy, but remember, it's not what happened today that should be at the front of your mind, it's what might happen tomorrow. You can help your child to recover if they have experienced a serious problem. It might be talking through a problem, which will be the obvious first instinct. But while you might want to quickly find solutions, it is also important to give your child the time and space to consider what's happened and decide how they want to deal with it. When talking through the problem, you might want to work together and to help them make a plan to deal with the situation. This might be specific actions or changes in behaviour, such as deciding to avoid a space or a person, or blocking and reporting someone. It might be taking practical steps. For example, if there's a malicious photo circulating that is upsetting them. In a situation like this, you can always seek additional help. You might speak to their school about this situation, or if the image is of a sexual nature, you could report it to CEOP, the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Command of the National Crime Agency. We have CEOP's details on the handout we will share with you, along with a list of other organisations who can help support you with a problem. And that's the end of our talk today. Thank you for joining and hope to see you again soon at one of our live online events.
Well, that's all from Chelsea, but I think that was a really important point to end on. We have looked at some pretty heavy and sometimes scary topics in this session, but I think the most important thing to remember is that you can always help your child recover if something does go wrong for them online. It might be something small where you can kind of make a plan together, or it might be something bigger where you might need help or to know how to report it to organisations like CEOP. As Chelsea said, we do have a parent handout with details of support organisations that you can contact, and obviously you can also contact us. And you can find that in the Resilient Families section of the Parents Own Local website. Alice is going to pop a link in the chat. But if you and your child can keep talking and stay aware of online risks, keep calm if something goes wrong, and figure out what to do together if it does, then you're on the right track. And that's the end of our session. We would be really grateful if you could take just a moment to complete this survey that's going to really help us develop and improve this service for parents. So we have loads of advice and information for you on the Parents Own Local website. You can explore and find more live events like this. If you have a question, you can contact us on the contact form and someone from our team will get in touch. Thank you for finding the time to join us today, and hopefully we will see you at another event soon.